Today we are starting on Chapter 7, Section 1, and we're talking about America and its eventual involvement in World War One. World War One was considered the war that was going to end all wars, and there were many main reasons why this happened. The main causes of World War One were militarism, the aggressive buildup of a nation's armed forces, alliances, which were nations that were formed partnerships to help protect and defend themselves, imperialism, where stronger nations began to take over weaker nations, and finally nationalism, where everybody thought their nation was the best. So, what was it? It was a war that literally involved all the nations of the world, about all of them. It happened from about 1914 to 1918. The long-term reasons why there was World War I was, of course, that alliance system, imperialistic competition, and the stockpiling of weapons. Short term, it involved the assassination of Franz Ferdinand of the Austro-Hungarian Empire. We would show you a short video to kind of go over that and explain in details how that happened and why it happened. But what it's going to do is it's going to cause a domino effect where other nations are going to get pulled in and pulled out, and based off of their alliances being pushed into this war or conflict. So, who were the key players of the First World War? The first thing we had was the Triple Alliance, and it was Austria, Hungary, and Italy. And the other side was the Triple Entente, which was Russia, France, and Great Britain. These nations are going to be warring together based off of different goals and economic decisions. So why did it take so long for America to get involved in this war? Thinking back 2 chapters ago, we talked about the whole idea that America was an isolationist, meaning that they didn't think they should get involved in somebody else's problems. If we focused on domestic issues, things that were going to affect our pockets in the United States, then we wouldn't have to be dragged into a conflict that was so large. And the question that we need to ask ourselves is isolationism really an option for a country that's as powerful as the United States? We know that they've fought in many wars. They fought in different ideas. Being able to be a part of the problems of other people was kind of a tough situation, but in reality, being a superpower now that we are, we're going to always be involved in those ideas or those conflicts. So the question becomes now is, what side should the United States pick? The first thing is the Central Powers. When you talk about the Central Powers, we have to think about the fact that there's 11 million German Americans. These are people who came from Germany, who have those roots back in Germany. We also had the Irish Americans who hated Great Britain. So you're talking about a large portion of our population that would say, why are we going to align ourselves with the Triple Alliance, with those Central Powers? On the other hand, you have the Allies, and those are the close cultural ties. They shared transatlantic cables, so censored stories. Big businesses loaned a lot of money to this party. So for us, to this group, the Allies or the Triple Entente, it kind of made more sense for the U.S. to pick that side. However, again, we didn't want to alienate all those that were of the German heritage or the Irish heritage who said, we shouldn't pick a side at all. So at the bottom of this page, I think it's really important to look at the United States decided to help somebody else, help one of the sides, even though they said they didn't. And if you look at the bottom, the exports. At the beginning of 1914, you're seeing, pretty much, Great Britain had more exports, about $594 million in exports, where France was 159 and Germany was 344. On the next 1915, you see that we almost doubled the amount of money or about the exports that we were sending to Britain. In the same sense, we really stopped pushing or sending in exports to Germany. And by 1916, it's pretty obvious which side we decided to choose for. France, obviously 5 times as much as it was before, 3 times as much for Britain, and Germany, fell a lot. So we were sending a lot of our products, a lot of our equipment in the form of exports to the Allied powers over the Central Powers. So what did it take to get the United States involved? The first thing was the blockades. The British blockade stopped all German ships going to America. So Germany announced that there was going to be a submarine war around Britain, meaning that they were trying to say, hey, Germany, you can't participate, you can't trade, you can't do with the United States. The United States is our ally, and we're going to pull them into this. the conflict. In May of 1915, Germany told America to stay off British ships, to send all Americans off of the British ships, because they could and would sink them because they were in this military conflict. So Lusitania is a ship that was torpedoed, and it sunk 1,200 passengers, including a crew, including 128 Americans. This was in the press as the whole idea of, and you see the poster there, take up the sword of justice, as a revenge for the Lusitania. The problem is, we know afterwards, we eventually found out that they were carrying 4,200 cases of ammunition. So even though we tried to play this off to the public as in, we need to take up arms, we needed to take a side, the reality of the situation was we were kind of lying there. We didn't tell the whole truth, and Germany, by their own war accords, had the right to sink that ship, even though it did kill Americans. So these blockades, the United States is going to sharply criticize Germany for their actions, and Germany agreed not to sink passenger ships without warning in the future. However, in 1917, they're going to start announcing, Germany, the idea of unlimited submarine warfare in the war zone. Why? Because otherwise their blockade would not be successful. That meant that anybody who was coming into their area in this war zone would be shot down, would be sunk. And this is really going to be scary to the United States, because the whole idea is, if we are still trying to support Britain, if we're trying to support France and the other allied powers, how are we going to get our equipment there? And if Germany sunk another ship, we would be in active war. Finally, number 3, the big point to get involved, was the Zimmerman Note. Again, I'm going to show you a short video about this too. But the U.S. is going to intercept a note from Germany to Mexico, and what it did is it promised Texas, New Mexico, and Arizona back in return for an alliance, meaning that if Mexico decided to attack America, then they promised that they would eventually take out these places, these other states of the United States, and give them back to Mexico for supporting such action. So when I ask you this question, what did it take for the U.S. to get involved? You're going to say Zimmerman Note and the sinking of 4 unarmed American ships led to the declaration of war, including the idea of the Lusitania. So when we look back, again, this section is all about why are we going to be pulled into this war, what is happening, and why is this conflict on such a large level? Will this be the war to end all wars as it's going to be advertised? How is this going to affect our people at home? How is this going to affect other nations? That's going to be what we'll talk about in the next couple sections. Very interesting, a lot of information, a lot of propaganda and film that we'll be able to take care of and view to make sure that we have a great understanding of World War I